Greetings, Ranger fans. Jake here for a deeper look at episode 22 of Power Rangers Dino Fury, Secret Santa. But first, a rapid run-through. Let's kick off the counter. It's morphin' time. Okay, so we open on the plaza where Javi's playing Christmas carols on his keyboard for tips, including random creepy ornament donations. Izzy jogs by to notice his broken keyboard key and remind him about Secret Santa shopping. Only 1 hour left. Then jogs by some bushes where Slither and Mucus were hiding. Welcome back from the dark dimension. Javi then asks advice from Santa, the real Santa, who mentions the time Mrs. Claus made him very thoughtful gloves and offers to use his magic sketchbook to help, but Javi goes shopping himself and joins the others at the base, popping the mystery star on top of their tree just as Amelia arrives with the Ranger fan mail from Buzz Blast. Time for Secret Santa gifts. Santa? I got Amelia Power Sander by mistake, and when the Rangers realize Javi got Sol on human gloves for a Dino Claus, they offer to go out and find a new gift while he keeps her busy. But not with carols, because she forgets the words. So they open a card, but it's from Mucus, so it disables their comms and teleporters and kicks off a ticking time bomb. Check the gifts! First is an electronics kit for Izzy from Ollie, clip from Crossed Wires, then a ghost poncho for Ollie from Amelia, clip from Destination Dino Henge. So those are safe, but Santa's sketchbook isn't, because he calls the others to report it as stolen just before they run into Slither and Mucus, who use the book to create a giant spider monster, so the Rangers summon the Fusion Ultrazord while Javi and Solon open the rest of the gifts, including homemade Flarkin-flavored ice cream for Ion from Zato, clip from our hero, a hand-stitched punching bag and gym shirt for Zato from Izzy, clip from Super Hot Shot, and specially made replacement keyboard key for Javi from Solon, meaning that all the gifts are way too thoughtful to be from Mucus, so they finally realize the star's a bomb and toss it into the sporks chest with the card to contain the explosion, restore the comms and teleporters, just as the others finish the Spider Monster with a Fusion Ultra Strike, so they all meet up again to take on Slither and the Henchmen just as Slither creates his next artistic masterpiece, a giant Slither. So they summon the Dino Fury Megazord Warrior formation and Moza Razordord Battle Boat to destroy the giant Slither in the magic sketchbook. Sorry, Santa. But Javi's learned that all the best gifts come from the heart, so he gives Solon his Christmas Carol songbook so she can join them all in singing Jingle Bells with Santa. Roll credits. And that's the end of the episode. Now, let's take a deeper look. Once again, we are rounding out the year with a holiday special, a practice that has become a staple of the Power Rangers franchise across the course of the last decade of airing on Nickelodeon, even if they did get skipped over during Super Mega Force and the second season of Beast Morphers in favor of ending on their respective grand finales. Unlike the Halloween specials, which will occasionally change things up with villain-focused clip shows or Sentai footage burning episodes, the Christmas specials have pretty consistently functioned as clip shows focusing on the Rangers, often giving special attention to how they have grown and developed over the course of the past year, and this episode is no different. Plus, this episode marks our 6th appearance of John Sumner as Santa Claus. Gotta love Fresno Bob bringing the holiday cheer. Oddly enough, his recurring appearances as Santa in every Christmas special since Dino Charge's Race to Rescue Christmas is arguably the biggest linchpin in terms of making Secret Santa actually work, since it has now become extremely well established that the real Santa Claus just happens to be regularly active in the hometowns of the Rangers, and has cooperated with multiple Power Ranger teams. This is why we have a built-in suspension of disbelief when the Santa listening to Javi's songs is shown to be the real Santa, complete with full-on magical powers that no one really questions, and why he's able to call up the Rangers on their communicators, even though he's technically never met this specific Ranger team. After all, he's met every other team from the last 6 years, including Dino Charge, which isn't even from the same dimension. Which raises some serious questions about the extent of Santa Claus's interdimensional abilities. This honestly demonstrates an interesting pattern that exists in both fiction and in real life, where all that really needs to happen for something to become normalized is for that thing to appear or be heard consistently enough for observers to internalize it as simply a part of their world. In works of fiction, this can be extremely useful in terms of defining the rules of the world that the characters exist within, while in the real world, this can actually be quite dangerous, as people can start accepting claims as truth, even if those claims are being used to discriminate against marginalized groups. Speaking of which, did anyone else notice how Santa's preferred method of making gifts is through the unpaid labor of elves? Like, I'm pretty sure that they didn't create that magic sketchbook to make your life easier, Santa. Although I will say the magic sketchbook was arguably the most disappointing element of this episode, as it's a genuinely fun and creative concept that we've seen in other works of fiction like the classic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Jack Kirby tribute, The King, but here it's ultimately only used for a pair of Zord battles when there are literally infinite possibilities for what Slither could be creating here. Admittedly, the Sentai version of the sketchbook was only used for creating cages that captured the Rangers and the keys that ultimately were able to free them, along with the obvious self-aggrandizing giant-sized Slither, known there as Wyzul. But that's still at least a bit more variety than just pulling a single random monster from a random unrelated source episode. Fun fact, the sketchbook episode of Ryusoulger, Supreme Artist, was actually the episode where Void Knight's counterpart Geizorg introduced himself to one of the Rangers for the very first time. Nice bit of irony to have this episode take place immediately after Void Knight's apparent destruction, right? Although this does bring us to two of the biggest questions of the episode, which are both referenced right at the start, but are never really resolved and will likely never be resolved. How did Slither and Mucus escape the Dark Dimension, and how did they know about Void Knight's apparent destruction by the Rangers? It's treated almost as a running gag throughout the episode that Slither and Mucus escape the Dark Dimension through some sort of fun adventure that is frequently alluded to but never actually described, and I'm cool with that. But the only way that they would know to seek revenge for Void Knight would have been if they returned to Area 62 and found evidence of his destruction, which doesn't really line up with the teaser at the end of Void Trap that pretty clearly indicated that he was able to successfully escape there with Santora. But I suppose that if he just left his damaged helmet lying on the floor and was chilling in another room when they dropped by, then his minions could have just assumed the worst. Maybe I'm reading too much into this. So perhaps instead we should look at the main story engine of this episode, which is how the opening of the gifts is used as a framing device for the clips of the various Rangers, given extra weight by the suspicion of one of the gifts being a bomb, much like how Dino Charge's Ghostest with the Mostest used clips as tests of character to identify a secret imposter. And much like with that episode, the main value behind the clips was to demonstrate how well the characters have gotten to know one another, and how little details can be key in demonstrating the relationships that had grown between the characters over time. And in both cases, the clips ended up being irrelevant to the actual secret threat that was hiding in plain sight the whole time. Those Dino Fury Dino Charge analogs just keep popping up, don't they? But much like how Waking Nightmares pulled together a bunch of different story-related episodes together, Secret Santa does a great job of making every standalone episode still feel important, with special focus given to Super Hotshot, Our Hero, and Crossed Wires, alongside the relevance that was already carried by the premiere episode, Destination Dinohenge. The gifts are all delightfully specific and detailed, each being well suited not only to the gift receiver, but also to the giver, which is something that not only resonates well with the lesson that the best gifts come from the heart, but also demonstrates the care and affection that the writers clearly have for these characters. It also weirdly reinforces that Cut Off is somehow the only truly standalone episode of the series thus far. I mean, even Superstition Strikes managed to at least introduce the character of Pop Pop, so make of that what you will. However, despite the good choice of episodes for the clips, and the apropos framing device for their implementation within the episode, we do still have something of an imbalance here, as several of the clips run on a bit too long, the recap of events from Super Hotshot especially feeling like it's taking way too long within the context of a ticking time bomb. Interestingly, this is a problem that could actually be easily solved by addressing the other issue I mentioned earlier with the underutilization of the sketchbook. Just toss in an extra monster battle. I mean, it might take a little bit more ADR... Ready and action. I mean, it might take a bit more ADR work, but trimming down some of the clips in favor of additional Sentai footage should still keep costs pretty comparable. This would not only help maintain the tension during the time bomb scenes down in the base, but also ramp up the stakes for the other Rangers fighting Slither's sketchbook creations, as you then get the actual impression that they really do need to destroy the sketchbook, or else the string of monsters will just never end. This wouldn't fix the fact that Slither and Mucus have two plans that don't really connect to each other in any meaningful way, but it would add tension to both, trimming down some of the lengthier clips to tighten up the time bomb scenes, while also expanding the Zord fights by making use of another one of Ryusoulger's less adaptation-friendly monsters. Then again, maybe the writers have plans for all of those monsters and just didn't have any footage they wanted to spare for this episode. Which is honestly not the worst problem to have. Story and footage editing nitpicks aside, this episode does succeed in accomplishing what is probably the biggest goal of any holiday special, and that is to hit you right in the feels with the heartwarming moments. Choosing to focus on Solon in particular was an excellent choice here, because she has managed to pretty consistently be the most likable member of the main cast, acting as a wonderful elderly teen mom of the group, and you just so badly want her to have the best Christmas gift possible. And although it would have been nice if he could have had some time to wrap it, I did like that the use of the songbook was effectively set up as an appropriate and thoughtful gift. Makes me wonder if Jingle Bells was the only song they could afford, though. This episode also functioned as an effective follow-up to the finale, with Zato's almost joking dismissal of Slither and Mucus's plight in the Dark Dimension coming back to bite the Rangers in a big way here, even if the timeline of everything has been a bit vague at this point. I mean, episode 14 was Halloween, and then episode 17 was summer, and then in episode 21, Javi said it was almost summer, but in episode 22 it's Christmas, so either this series is canonically taking place in the southern hemisphere, which would make winter clothes at Christmas time make no sense, or else maybe episode 14 actually took place earlier, and Javi's joke about the summer coming up was just poorly worded on his part, which would arguably make sense considering that this episode finally solidified Javi's previously ill-defined character as being just a super nice guy who was frequently foolishly misguided, hence buying a pair of human-sized gloves for 3-clawed dino hands. Or maybe they've just been Rangers for an undefined period of time and I'm working far too hard to establish a timeline for a show that is about to switch over to being a binge-watch streaming series. Or maybe it's just the magic of Christmas. And Santa being a seasoned time traveler. So make sure to join me next year for a deeper look at Season 2 of Power Rangers Dino Fury, coming at some point to Netflix, and if you would like to share this week's rapid run-through, you can find it as a standalone clip over at Morphin Legacy's YouTube channel. Please like, share, subscribe to us both, ring the bell for future notifications, and until next year, farewell Ranger fans, and let the power protect you.